Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fan Appreciation Month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm taking a look at a Hong Kong martial arts film from 1980. That movie is the Crippled Masters 2, Two Crippled Heroes, sent to me as part of a two-pack along with the Crippled Masters 3. Just as a heads up, yes, I will be covering the Crippled Masters 3 a little later on this month. Now, a couple of things before I dive into the movie. First of all, for those of you who didn't catch it, about a week and a half ago, I saw the first Crippled Masters film, and the best I could say was that it was certainly a fascinating cinematic oddity that is totally worth checking out once. However, though, if you honestly expect any of it to make any sense, what with the god-awful dub, the horrible translation, and the absolutely irritating sound mix, good fucking luck. I really wasn't able to, dump on it totally. It's just, it had a whole lot of problems going for it. Now, I just want to make that point clear. Number two, I have no idea if the Crippled Masters 2 and the Crippled Masters 3 are even connected to the first film outside of the two stars. Because apparently they're only known as the Crippled Masters 2 and the Crippled Masters 3 in the US. In all other parts of the world, the Crippled Masters 2 is just simply known as Crippled Heroes, or whatever Crippled Heroes would translate to in whatever country you are watching the film in. So I have no idea if this thing is going to try to continue the almost nonsensical story from the first one or not. But hey, who knows? Perhaps honestly it will carry on, or maybe it'll be a whole new story. I don't know. And also, you guys might hear every so often my windows are rattling a little bit. It's because it is incredibly windy outside right now. So you guys, I'm really sorry. You're just gonna have to learn to deal with that if it gets too loud. So now, I'm wondering if this thing is going to be any good. I'm wondering if the translation on this one is going to be better than what was in the first Crippled Masters. I'm wondering if the dub is going to be better. The only way I'm going to find out any of this is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out the Crippled Masters 2, Two Crippled Heroes. Alright guys, two things. Number one, this has nothing to do with the first Crippled Masters, so that answers that. Two, I don't even know how in the fuck it's possible. The dub in this thing is 10 times worse than... Wow. Okay, so even though he has no arms, he's able to use a knife incredibly well. Anyway, the dub in this thing, at least so far, far worse than what was in the first film. I have a feeling this is going to suck, guys. I swear, guys, that fucking chimp is the most irritating character in this movie. Oh, and by the way, yeah, one of them started the film with a pet chimp. I don't totally understand why, but that chimp is by far the most irritating thing in this whole movie, and I never really thought I would say this. I really hope that somebody shoots it. Because it's that damned annoying. Okay, guys, good news. The plus side is that this film is actually trying to be be funny, and in its own warped, disturbing sort of way, it's actually succeeding at being funny. I was not expecting that. Alright guys, I have awesome news. The fucking chimp is dead. Yes, I'm so happy. Spoilers for those of you who actually wanted to watch this. The chimp dies, and I couldn't be fucking happier. That thing was an irritating piece of shit. You know, guys, I'm just gonna say this right now. I cannot wait until this story ends. This movie is really beginning to just, drain on me. The writing is that bad, the acting is that terrible, and the fight scenes are that dull. But hey, I will be able to go into more detail when the movie's done. I just kind of wanted to let you guys know now. Okay, I have a small question. So, the person who represents the warlord said that he wanted both of our crippled heroes to show up within 24 hours or else he was going to kill the entire town. Well, what happens if only one of them shows up then? Is he just going to kill half of them? Well, correction. He would probably kill half of them if the other guy didn't sneak into the town and somehow overnight remove all of the firing pins from everybody's guns. No, I don't. I do not understand how in the fuck that is supposed to work either. Just, god damn, man. A whole lot of this is just not making a whole lot of sense, guys. Okay, that ending was even more sudden than the ending of the first one. Well, guys, let me shut that off. That was the Crippled Masters 2, Two Crippled Heroes. Yeah, for the second straight time, while watching a film in this pseudo-franchise, the villain apparently dies, and except, like last time, it just sort of ended with a freeze frame. Here, it cuts right to a black screen which says, "The End." Genuinely makes me think that there's probably something missing there, because that didn't feel like an ending. That didn't even feel like closure. So, I guess it's time that we talk about this, and why don't we cover a whole bunch of my grievances I had with the first film, and see if they actually remedied any of them here. Number one, I talked about how bad the, dub was. They did not fix that at all. The dub here is far, far, far worse. In fact, it's a pretty safe bet. This is probably one of the worst dubs I have ever heard for anything. This is awful. I think part of it has to do with the fact that it was probably dubbed in Hong Kong. Most of the actors probably could barely speak English and were probably being fed the lines as opposed to actually learning them, which would probably also explain the incredibly stilted dialogue. In fact, I haven't seen dialogue which is that stilted and sounded that unnatural since I watched the Charlie Brown Christmas special. However, that thing sounded so terrible because the actors were too young to read and they had to be fed the lines a little bit at a time. These were adults, and there isn't a single line of dialogue that is longer, than like 2 sentences. Are you telling me you couldn't feed them 2 sentences of English and then hope and pray that it matches up with the mouth movements of the character speaking? Mind you, rarely, if ever, does it match the mouth movements. And when I say that, I mean that oftentimes a character will pause as if the actor will pause as if the character on screen has stopped talking for a second, but the character's still moving their mouth. It's very weird. There's very, very rare instances when the pauses in dialogue actually match the mouth movements, but it doesn't happen very often. So this thing was just dubbed terribly. The acting is awful. For whatever reason, a whole lot of the cast are trying and failing miserably at hiding a British accent. And when I say that, I mean that we will have characters who speak with no accent at all, and then suddenly about halfway through their sentence, they suddenly just slip into British. It's very weird, sounds very odd. I really could probably tell you about just the dub and just be here for probably a good 30 minutes. I'm not going to, though. I can just say that this dub is terrible, and it makes me really miss the dub from the first Crippled, Masters. Just saying a lot because I thought that dub sucked too. Translation issues. Again, the story here makes very, very little sense, if any, 9 times out of 10. And I'm going to assume that's, again, because of translation problems, which is very easy possible. However, though, it still does not explain how, similar to how in the first film, there was a plot point brought up very late in the film. I'm talking just a little bit over the halfway point, like 3/4 of the way is a little bit closer. And that was talking about the fucking jade horses. And then that became the huge point in that one. Here, the actual villain is not introduced until about 3/4 of the way through, which means that technically everything which is built up to this point ultimately was built up for kind of nothing, and it just sort of felt like a massive waste. Again, you know, I totally understand that our proper villain works for, you know, the warlord, and that they continue to talk about the warlord throughout the entire film. We never see this warlord, but we do hear about him. But we do hear about the warlord plenty of times. However, though, we never actually see a member of his army or any soldiers from his army, period, until about 3/4 of the way through, and the final fight, which once more is a gigantic, like, 2 versus 1 fight, is actually against the, I believe he was a major in the, you know, warlord's army. And that fight, barring the few little extra gimmicks which were added into this film, and I'll cover those in just a sec, a whole lot of the segments, though, were almost beat-for-beat remakes of the final fight in the first film. Except, well, for the ending, because the ending, they just, you know, capitalized on all of their shitty little, you know, gimmicks. You know what? I'm going to talk about the gimmicks, because the gimmicks are the only difference between this thing and the first one. Our character who has no arms now has throwing knives attached to his ankle, and he throws them with his feet, which is really cool the first time you see it. But since every single fight, and almost every single instance that he has to do anything, he's always pulling out these throwing knives, it gets very old very fast. And the character who has no functional legs, he does have legs, but they're kind of withered and dead. He now has a skateboard which has two retractable hooks on chains. I swear to God, these are completely retractable because at one point he throws both of them out, and he then goes and, like, pushes on the front of the board. Mind you, there are no buttons or anything on the front of the board. And then you can just and you then hear this, and you hear this almost like zipping sound as the 2 hooks are coming back. That's literally it for gimmicks. Oh yes, and also the guy who had no arms apparently had, well, no, he didn't apparently have, he did have a chimp, who apparently was supposed to be a helper monkey. I didn't know that until after the fucking thing died, and it was finally implied, yeah, he's there to help you eat, which the chimp never did in the first place. That chimp, it would have been really nice if we would have actually seen the chimp function as some kind of a, you know, like helper monkey, helper animal kind of a thing. But no, it was just there to be incredibly irritating, and it served no purpose except to basically piss off one of our characters when the thing is finally beaten to death with a fucking chain, which is probably the happiest moment I had in the entire film, is when they finally had the chimp trapped in a fucking, like, bed sheet and proceeded to beat it with a chain. I didn't like the chimp, you can probably tell. Otherwise, guys, beyond the skateboard, the chimp, and the throwing knives, we basically have a film that is almost identical to the first Crippled, you know, Masters. Now, I understand that is because when your 2 stars are basically armless or legless, you have very, very limited things you can do with it. However, I was sort of hoping for a story that was marginally better. Now, mind you, this time around we are only given a vague explanation as to what happened to one of them, as to why he lost his arms. He said that why he lost one arm. He said that a soldier cut off the arm that now has like a bit of like a stub on the end. There is literally nothing, though, which tells why he lost the other arm, because he very, very blatantly says that a soldier cut off an arm. That's one arm. Don't know what the hell happened to the other one, and as for the other guy's legs, there's literally zero explanation. But frankly, I don't need any kind of an explanation, because at this point I really don't much care. Still, guys, the writing here is just terrible, and again, it probably has to do with the translation. It also could have to do with the fact that it really does feel, you know, like they were basically just trying to remake the first one, and they didn't do a very good job of it. The fight scenes, I'm going to say this, a whole lot of the fight scenes almost feel 100% lifted from the first film. Again, minus anything involving minus everything involving the throwing knives and the skateboard, because those get used occasionally, and they actually get used to the point of actually not being cool anymore. Because mind you, the both of them start off really cool, but then you see them in every single fight scene used in the exact same manner, and it just grows incredibly it grows incredibly tiresome, incredibly quick. But mind you, I should also mention, as has been mentioned many times, I'm not exactly a fan of martial arts films. So honestly, if you're really into martial arts, movies, you probably are not going to mind that at all. I myself found it to be a little bit dull, okay? So, the dub here was awful. Body language, because, that actually is the only thing I had to work with in terms of actual acting, is incredibly goofy. Oh, wait, I do have one other thing when it comes to writing. There are like 2, maybe 3 scenes which are played up for laughs. A lot of it is physical, comedy. And that actually works. That seriously is the bright spot in this film, is when it's trying to be funny, it's genuinely kind of funny. So, we honestly can take, that for, like what it's worth. At least in terms of physical comedy, it totally works. Everything else, not quite, so much. Anyway, and the body language on a whole lot of these actors, like there is, one guy who is shot. Now, I would assume if you were shot in the back at point blank range, you would just drop straight away. This guy, no. He very slowly has to turn around, kneel down as slowly as possible, and then very slowly lie down on his face. It literally is like watching a gunshot victim in slow motion. It's really not good. And mind you, there is a ton of that, which is equally as bad. However, that one there is the one that just pops into my head the most. So yeah, body language here is really kind of poor. The acting here in terms of the dub is terrible, and the fight scenes kind of stink. Is there anything else really worth mentioning? Sound mix. I have to talk about the sound mix again. We have the same kind of problems I mentioned in the first one, as in every single impact is basically met with only about 3 or 4 sound effects. However, at least here, first of all, the sounds are actually a little bit quieter, and they almost sound realistic at times. And 2, they actually have a much wider range of snapping like snapping sounds and cloth friggin' just sort of fucking like cloth like ruffling sounds and everything to actually make it work. So in terms of sound mix, when it comes to actually doing the Foley effects for the fights, it works. It certainly leaps and bounds better than what was in the first Crippled Masters, but that's not saying a whole lot. Music, on the other hand, is mixed terribly. I'm going to tell you guys right now, the music in this thing, it is absolutely horrifically distorted, where I could hear the speakers on my laptop crackle. Makes me happy I didn't bother to put it on my television, because, well, I actually use the speakers on my TV a hell of a lot more than I use the ones on my, laptop. So, yeah, I actually don't mind if these things die. Anyway, and that, guys, is honestly not, and that right there is not just 1 or 2 pieces of music. That's almost the entire score. Is that absolutely loudly mixed? It's terrible. It is awful. It really, really sucks. God, is there anything else I can talk about? Special effects. I can actually talk about special effects here, because sometimes our legless master has to fly. And what I mean is that you will see him basically like climbing up. You'll see him like climbing up another actor, or he'll be climbing up a tree. And instead of actually trying to make it look decent, you actually can see the wire on his back. And I'm just gonna use my sleeve here for a proxy, lifting up his shirt, and you see it jut like this like this far up. They couldn't even be asked to make that even look half fucking good. And you see it every single time. The like 4, 5, 6 times he has to do that. You always see you always see the back of his shirt lift up. You always see it lift up like this, and you can even see the hook that is in the fucking shirt, which is shocking because the picture quality on this thing is fuzzy as shit, and the fact that I could still see it when the picture quality is this bad, oh my god, that speaks volumes. Now, also, while I'm on the subject of picture, quality, I wanna talk about the people over at Apprehensive Films, the company that put out this DVD 2 pack. Instead of actually trying to digitally remaster the film, it literally looks to me as fucking if they found a very poor quality copy of the Crippled Masters 2 on VHS, and they toss it into a VCR, and then they hooked up a dazzle and just captured it there, and then slapped it onto a DVD and said, okay, there, fuck you, it's done. It's a very poor, very shoddily done DVD, and the picture quality is terrible. And when I happen to say a very, very low quality VHS, seriously guys, I'm talking about you actually will see moments where the tape was crinkled, and it actually sort of causes weird little fucking like staticky kind of sort of effects to pop up on the screen. Things which by all rights would have been cleaned up if the people who made this thing actually gave even half a shit. So when all is said and done, am I able to recommend the Crippled Masters 2 Crippled Heroes? No. There is no fucking way. If you absolutely have to watch a Crippled Masters movie, right now I say watch the first one. The first one honestly is not even, all that good. However, I do have to stress again, I am not a big martial arts fan. So, I honestly am not the best, judge for this sort of thing. Oh my god. This thing here was a chore, and the part that sucks is that in a week and a half, I have to do the Crippled Masters 3. Oh, fun. And while I'm on the subject of that, the Crippled Masters 2 Crippled Heroes came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in is a YouTuber by the name of Monkey Radar, and I want you guys to please head over to his channel. That is youtube.com/user/Monkey Radar. Head over there, guys, and check out everything he has. And Monkey, thank you, because I genuinely had no clue if this one or even the first one, and I totally understand that you weren't the one who sent in the first one, but still, I was genuinely curious if these things were going to be any good. Sadly, they really haven't been, and I still have to sit through the third one. But I wouldn't have known if it wasn't for you and if it also wasn't for you and Medio sending in these two and the first one. So yes, guys, once more, that is youtube.com/user/Monkey Radar. Swing over there and check out everything that Monkey has. Once more, dude, thank you very much. Oh my god, this thing was a pain to sit through. You know what? I'm gonna go find something else to watch. Just something, anything, I don't care. I think I'll go pop in my copy of maybe the fucking Blues Brothers. There we go. I really haven't watched that thing in probably a good year. So yeah, I am gonna go do that, guys. So yeah, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.